Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast. We serve you up stories, you serve us up high fives whenever we see you. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story. What story elements do you guys have? I have magic system.
I have Pantheon.
I have sequel.
Yeah. So is this going to be a sequel to The New Dawn?
Yes.
Okay. I guess you'll set up the world building then, I guess.
Yeah. So it's not going to be for much of the world building, except because that's what you guys are probably going to come in and do. Except I'm just going to frame where the sequel is taking place at. So kind of the end of the last one, our group of heroes and probably the villain definitely, and then they got transported to this other planet.
Right,
kind
the
of
planet
the
of the giants.
Yeah, and so it is all new. Not necessarily all new. We can pull some things from the last one, characters, maybe some things, but that's what I was thinking then with what you guys have.
Absolutely.
No one has known anything about what's going on over here.
Right.
For, millennia or whatever it is. And so with its own things, I would say, I don't know, maybe you guys want to input on this. I think you talked about possibly the guy that was on top of the mountain. Either people would give up their life for him, to hold whatever it was at bay that they assumed was going on, or they were being sent over there.
Yeah.
Interspersedly. So I don't know how that might work in with, what's become of them. Maybe they're part of the Pantheon. Not that they have to be.
Right.
Just in my mind, we could be coming across, it's a desolate planet. No one's over there except for little bits of, I don't know what kind of creatures, whatever we want to make of this other world. It has been, crashed and then redeveloping the last, I don't know, several millennia, however long it's been.
At least 1,000 years, maybe like 1,500 years, I think is
kind of on its own. So all of its, ecosystems, power structures of, how things happen, and it's all kind of a fresh slate. But we're pulling on that, our heroes have kind of followed the villain and his entourage over here to try to catch up with him and see what this other place is all about.
Great. That sounds awesome.
Yep.
Reed, do you want me to go next or do you want to go next? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah. Yes, I do. But if you lay out the magic system, I might have more.
All right. So do you guys know...
More.
Do you guys know how alcohol is made? The yeast consumes the sugar, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then poops out alcohol, and then when it dies, it makes CO2, right?
Yeah, I was going to nonchalantly say that the alcohol fairies poop it out, but that's actually quite literally how it happens.
Here's where we're getting at. You're absolutely right. It is the alcohol fairies. So bacteria isn't actually bacteria. Okay. They kind of are fairies. Basically, they are... Bacteria is in essence kind of like fairies. They're an organism that's very small and you can't see them and they do things.
Yeah.
The thing is that we have found a way to learn about them and learn from them. They're actually cultures. Bacteria is called cultures, but they have actual cultures. They're actually semi-sentient, and they don't die and create this. It's like when you want to make a beer, you invite a certain type of bacteria to live in your kind of a certain type of fairy to live in your giant pot for a couple of weeks. You feed it its favorite foods, and then they magically create the whatever it is you want, right?
Yep.
So you invite them in, they come in, they hang out for a little bit, and then you exchange them, right? So what you'll do is you kind of think of like a big carboy, a big pot, and you fill it full of water, and then you put in the different types of foods that they like. And then you go and a priest or someone will bring in, or a magic person who knows will bring in a box, a house, and they'll put the house into the liquid, and the magical creatures, think of them kind of like mushishi or just like spirits, will come in and consume the food. And based on what kind of food you've given them, they'll produce some kind of mixture, right? Most of it's just bland garbage. If you garbage in, garbage out, if you give them flour to make food out of, they'll make you flour tasting sort of gray milk, that's just insipid and tastes of flour.
Yeah.
So like a grain milk.
Right. Like that flax milk you left in my house that tastes weird and disgusting.
Yeah, no.
anyways,
Sometimes they have a interesting flavor, and I add it to my coffee, and
yeah, I haven't tried it in
particularly the
coffee
nut
yet,
ones.
and we'll try. But anyways,
But
regardless,
as Friar Truck Tuck would say, barley was created by God for the purpose of beer.
yeah, basically. But these creatures are vast and varied and have consciousness and will, right? So I've done some brewing in my life, and it seems like sometimes the yeast is better than other times. And I've worked at breweries before, and sometimes it feels like you're kind of playing games with the beer to get it to come out and pour right, you know? And all I'm doing is taking that concept and saying, yes, because they're magic little creatures.
Right. Of
Right?
course they are.
And so there is like your 100 prescribed sort of recipes, you know? And then there'll be kind of shops or schools, they call them, or neighborhoods, they call them. And it's like a shop, and you go there, and then you pay them a certain amount of money, and they bring a house to you. A house being a thing that contains these fairies or creatures, right? If we're talking, it could be, you know, some people might call it a yeast cake. But the thing is that they're magical. So depending on what kind of thing you want to make, you have a different type of you order a different type of fairy to your house. You don't ever take it yourself, the yeast yourself. It's all very kind of religious. So like people will, not religious, but it's all very kind of official, right? People will go into a place and like it's the spring and it's the first thaw of the spring, and everyone's making a big old vat of preserved cabbage, you know, or it's the fall and everyone's making a big old vat of preserved cabbage, and so the house tender or whatever will come and he will bring these little houses to everyone's giant crock in their backyard, you know. So what I'm saying is that sorry, things are like evolving as I'm talking about them, and you can get really good and regular results for everything if you go to a house tender, because they know who it is that lives in the houses and how to apply it to what ingredients. Obviously, if you leave a big vat of sugary water outside, something's gonna move in.
Yeah.
Right? And some people do it as experiments, like as a way to basically find new fairies, you know, find different and interesting cultures. But it's the ones that move in are considered wild, and they make everything taste like gamey, and they don't really listen to instructions, and they haven't really been sort of taught to like produce what you want. But from them, you can produce anything, right? So they have it perfected that you can make a giant pot and you just put in just like raw sugar from like sugar beets, right? And then you get the right house in there. And then in like 30 days, you have like a giant cauldron filled with any kind of grain that you want. Like it literally turns it into something else, because that's what these things have been sort of raised to do, you know, or they can turn it into, you know, I was thinking, what's that? There's a thing you can cook with that's really, really rare. It's got little tiny red. Do you know what I mean, Reed? It's like these little tiny
Saffron?
red saffron. Right. So you use saffron and you can like create these crazy things, because the rarer the thing is, the rarer the culture is. And like, you know, people are constantly mixing and matching things. Anyways, you can make anything you want. You can make invisibility potions. You can make potions that make you fly. You can make potions that, you know, some people are experimenting with potions that sort of turn you into an animal for a couple of hours or make you really strong. Obviously, the harder to get ones are the weirder ones are harder to get. So just like health potions are very easy to get because it's a very simple thing and the cultures are widespread, you know. But different groups of people will sort of hoard different specific abilities. And you're not supposed to, it's like considered taboo to have the cultures live inside of you, right? There are people talk about letting the cultures live inside of you and have them do their work like inside of you, and that's considered like kind of weird and taboo. Like, why would you want them to live inside of you? You need to make the thing and then consume it, you know. But there are strange people who eat weird food and, you know, allow changes to happen, allow things to happen inside of them and that those people are considered kind of strange. They're typically the ones who are. What happens is a person becomes good at brewing and figuring out the different mixtures of different cultures, and then he gets really popular, and then he starts to experiment with things that people don't understand, and then within a couple of years he's doing this, and then people ostracize him. So the advancement of the technology is very slow because something happens to everyone who researches this where they start to do that to themselves, and then they get ostracized. So oftentimes, if you meet one of them, they'll be very smart, but everyone kind of doesn't like them. Anyways, that's the magic system. What do you guys think?
That sounds really fun.
A slight idea I have with this is, given the calamity that happened, most of this world is basically been repopularized by these people that have been sent over. So there's not a lot of hard settlement, right? Most everybody, they might winter in a place, mark different places. It's just kind of like, whatever other creatures and stuff that have developed here, it's made it very harsh. But because the the bulk of the population coming back over has all been this kind of warrior class, it's developed that, most of the, let's say, civilized world is kind of either small groups or very personal, like just kind of, that's just the way it was, your kid grows up, if you have a kid, and then he goes off, and then you might have certain places that you meet back up at the winter time, and then everyone's going off and,
planet?
In groups of very few people, and there might be a few people that, have like a lodge or a home somewhere, but it's all kind of like does that make sense? I think so, but mainly because a lot of, let's say, the population that's
they're fighters
here had to survive the calamity. If they survived the calamity of the previous one, got pretty scattered, and then the main bulk of the people that have now come here, that main guy has been sending over here.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not necessarily farmers. They're not, traders. They might have some survival skills. So the culture of anybody that's here is like kind of like roving, not roving bands like huge, but
like or anything like that. Yeah.
All like a ranger class, like just kind of going out, finding what they can, coming back to a place that maybe over the years their grandfathers figured out that it was safe, and then 5 or 6 of them might huddle up somewhere for a winter, and then go out, and have their, so there's no like huge.
I kind of like the idea that the bacteria culture guys, the little boys who live inside
does
the
that
houses,
make sense, or what do you guys think?
Are the thing that broke through the firmament
All
of this planet.
I don't know. That was my 2 bits as far as that going along, but
it was like a giant meteor or something that broke through the firmament, and then the rock or whatever split and broke apart all around the world, and then the creatures started to develop, kind of how they say, some people theorize that life was seeded on Earth, is that like a passing asteroid with some like bacteria landed on Earth, and that's what evolved to be humans. That same idea that's what these things are. Oh, right. They weren't the ones who their firmament was. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it could have come after that.
Maybe I should throw
I'd say
what the idea
going
I had
off of what was set up in the last one, it could have come after that.
This goes back pre-calamity.
I think it was this race of people. What was established in the last one is that they figured out how to get to space, but by doing so, they broke through their own firmament.
And I don't actually plan to. But the wise old man, the warrior that was up on the plateau,
right?
And he was basically holding in check the invasion from this planet where now, the stone monsters, the stone giants, right?
Yeah, we had theorized that he was doing that, or that he was sending people over to fight them. But
anyway, it's clear that the population of both planets had common ancestry. But there were the pantheon is a mythology that grew up surrounding the early examples of a few of the ancestors who learned how to inhabit or to shall we say, animate or activate the stone giants.
Okay.
Yeah, and the early stone giants tended to like rule geographical areas, and then they would war with each other, and it got to be, there was a lot of speculation about who they were, but they were actually almost like vehicles. I could imagine like going back to early civilization with a tank. It would be like viewed as magical.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so these guys, the first guys, they would a mythology grew up around these ruling stone giants and they tended to set up and rule a geographical area and then war with each other, and then they would bring some more guys on to inhabit more stone giants, and then I don't remember all the things that came around with invading the sister planet, but that was a thing. But rather than like Greek mythology or whatever, where you have the god, the wind god, or the sun god, or the god of war or fertility,
Right.
These were more like less godlike and more warrior-like. Does that make any sense? But yet, their immense power was obvious. I mean, you have a 100-foot tall. What did we say?
Yeah, between 1 and 400 feet tall.
Yeah, these giants. That would let's just say it would change the dynamic of the phalanx, so to speak. Wop wop. So this mythology grew up around and gave these guys kind of like a godlike aura, a mythology. And then the calamity came and kind of crumbled. Destroyed the civilization that they had built up, and yet these a belief that in these stone giant characters still persisted, and they would be named after the city that they ruled from, for example.
Right. So the stone, basically, there was the race that was there, and they found the giants, the suits.
Yeah, and how to animate the stone. There may have been some of this. I was thinking in connection with the fairy, if these fairies were left to themselves, like what would happen if there was an action taken, like on the side of a mountain, on a cliffside, for example.
Right.
And then you got hundreds of feet of solid rock becomes animated and is seeking direction.
Yeah, that's the thing I was thinking about. What if the actual pantheon, the actual god of the actual universe, right, created the universe and created basically an engine, an engine to keep the world together, right? And this engine were his angels, his heavenly beings, right?
Okay.
And they were microscopically small, and they were distributed throughout the entire world, and each of them knew their job, which was to turn matter from one form to another.
Yeah.
Right. And what he did was he created these worlds with the firmaments around them, and then sealed them to protect them because a little creature who needs to like create is constantly just like creating hydrogen. If he were to like get into our Earth's atmosphere and then multiply and just create hydrogen, our world would explode.
Yeah.
So he basically created them and then created these firmaments, and so then the people found a way, maybe through leftover these angels, these little cultures found a way to manipulate them, almost like the energy that they are, the energy that holds matter together. We know that there's an energy that holds atoms together, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's like that. So these guys found a way to sort of tap into them and create these stone giants, and then they tried escaping their firmament, thinking that, years after this pantheon was created, thinking that way will, that's just our next step. That's what we're going to do next. And they broke free, and the calamity that it brought was these angels from the outside who were never supposed to be in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And started to wreak destruction. They started to consume all of the plant matter.
Yeah.
Or they started to consume all of one element. So you go over to this world and there just isn't any iron.
Yeah.
And all iron like oxidizes and rusts away because these things, so then the giant planet, in order to escape, travels to the first planet, destroys their firmament, and causes the same level of destruction, right? And so people don't have to know that that's what these things are and that's what these things are doing, because right now they're just cute little guys who can, make invisibility potions and stuff. But really what they are the engines of creation.
Yeah.
Who are being misappropriated to, make health potions. Because how else are you going to like combine beetroot juice and, dirt
Mhm.
and sunflower seeds and create a thing that literally gives you life back.
Yeah.
It's just a recipe that the cultures, the angels understand. Oh, this, and this, make that. There it is, pure life in a jar.
Yeah.
You know.
I saw a thing on a guy was talking about the different things. You take the simplest single cell organism and then break down its component parts. So you've got a bunch of different amino acids. You've got a bunch of different proteins. You've got, the RNA and the DNA and all the little things. And if you try to isolate each of these elements, so to speak, and like put them in a little tiny vial, or get a
Right.
bunch of them together,
Right.
and then you give them to a scientist and say, okay, here you've got the building blocks, create life. And he doesn't, there isn't a way to encourage these things to come together in such a way that would create a living organism.
Right.
It requires something else that we don't understand.
Right. And so that's true of anything. And so in our story's case, the world came to be by this deity creating all the matter and the required resources, but then creating all of these beings to basically be the engine, be the design, and manufacture this whole world. And somewhere along the way, we got lost because the firmaments have been broken, because things that are outside are coming in, and that's causing chaos on the worlds.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, that would make...
Absolutely. You guys have any other fun world building ideas? I kind of like the idea that iron, like there's no iron, or you like, if you want iron, it has to be like heavily greased. You're like, or waxed. You're like
I think it's a
constantly
good
rubbing wax on it because it
build
just
for the
like
new world we're coming to.
iron just like gets eaten away immediately.
Like, so all these, these guys whose main claim to fame that they've spent their whole training in swordsmanship, and they get over here and their swords start just like
exactly
going to crap.
I think about, like Seth was saying, you've read Dune. Seth hasn't read Dune, but he's watched the movie. You think about it like Arrakis.
Yeah.
Like a terribly harsh environment,
Mm-hmm.
but that is it's the place. It's like this planet is an incredibly harsh environment, and so people can't build cities, because that's not what they do.
Yeah.
And so what do? They travel around in small groups and they fight each other, and they remind each other of their oaths. That's just a thing that came into my brain. They're constantly reminding, because every single one of them is a descendant of, or is a person who came up the mountain and challenged the swordsman and was convinced to come here. And I would say there's some women swordsmen, so there is descendants and there's children.
Mm-hmm.
It's very few and far between because it's a harsh place. But every single person is either a descendant of or someone who did that, So it's like, talk about a warrior society, talk about like a terrifying force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and I like that you threw in like there would be from time to time like one with the right characteristics would like actually take over, and that guy, the guy that had been there,
would come,
would go on to the next planet.
Yeah, and maybe that's one of the things they're doing is they're all they know that the original guy, hundreds of years ago, the original guy did come over.
Yeah.
And he apparently knew what was supposed to be next. And so everyone's kind of like, not lost, but everyone's kind of, it's like a giant holding pattern. They fight, they war, they travel, they train, and they're just kind of waiting for something to happen. Something has to happen, Maybe every couple hundred years, like a giant surfaces, and then people sort of pour from all corners of the world to like fight it.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a kind of a good place to start. We will pick it up next week. If you want to hear more of episodes, you can look us up on, anywhere really, where you find podcasts. We'd be happy to serve you anywhere. Our website. If you want to give us a cool suggestion about your ideas, I'd love to hear it. Send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or at me on Twitter, at @getsbettercast. If you thought that this story was kind of boring, the lead up, and, not very interesting, and we should just switch to something else, I would say just wait. It gets better.